The Braves farm system has 3 glaring flaws it needs to fix for 2025. Let's talk about it. Yes, welcome on in to Braves Today for Friday, December 27th. Your source of news, notes, and updates on your Atlanta Braves. I'm your host, Lindsay Crosby. You can follow me on Twitter and Blue Sky at Crosby Baseball. You can follow the show on Twitter, Braves_today. We have a Facebook page and Instagram as well. And you can find all of my written work, BravesToday.com. That's the Braves Today Substack, as this is both a podcast and a newsletter. A subscription over there, free or paid, is the best way to support us. But also, if you're listening to us on audio or on YouTube, thank you for being here. We really do appreciate it. Subscribers to the Substack, by the way, finally got that What the Braves Saw in Davis Daniel article dropped on Thursday. And this morning, they got an article looking at the different rotations in the National League East. Who was the next man up? What were some of the concerns and expected WAR from those 5 rotations in the National League East? So go check out BravesToday.com. Again, free or paid, either way, supports the show a ton. But as we get into the new year, we're going to start talking about some of the areas the Braves need to work on. And this is not necessarily a talent acquisition for the Major League roster for 25 standpoint, right? This is not fundamental flaws, but things the Braves need to work on as an organization. We're going to start in the minor leagues, and there's 3 real things that I want the Braves to do. And I think the first one and the most glaring issue in the Braves minor league system is there is no heir apparent top-level shortstop prospect to be found. Now, I can hear you signed Jose Perdomo last year. Nacho Alvarez is in AAA. Let me go through all of these guys and explain what you're dealing with at the shortstop position in the Braves farm system. So we're going to use, like we do a lot, we're going to use the roster resource page from Fangraphs to try and go through the system and talk about some of these guys. It's not perfect. Some players they have at second base. They have Jose Devers at second base. Christian Caro, the Rule 5 pick, is at second base. Mario Baez, international prospect, is at second base. But at shortstop, they have 9 guys listed in the minor leagues at different for the 4 different levels and rookie ball. In AAA, Nacho Alvarez Jr. and Luke Waddell. And I think the issue here with both of these guys is you don't necessarily have the offensive impact that you need or the defense that you need to stick at the major league level. And all the conversation about Orlando Arcia, what has been the big takeaway that you've heard from the coaching staff, that you've heard from other people like me, whatever? It's been, as long as you can play really good defense, you can bat ninth and whatever we get is fine. And obviously that's getting tested by Orlando Arcia in the year he had last year. But the thing with Nacho Alvarez and Luke Waddell, we'll start with Alvarez first, is there is a growing consensus or idea that Nacho Alvarez defensively is not good enough to stick at shortstop. And so, obviously, moving off of short, back up. Before moving off short, if you're not going to be an exceptional defender at shortstop, offensively, you need to be making an impact. Like, ideally, you want a guy that does both, right? Get you a man that does both. But if you're not going to be an impact defender at shortstop, Nacho Alvarez appears to be stretched from a range perspective, a little bit from an arm perspective. It feels like the strength is there, but just for some reason, it's not quite working right at short. You've got to hit more. But the issue for Nacho Alvarez is he's not hitting for a lot of impact, right? And because of that, he is in a really weird profile now. He played some third base down the stretch last year in case Gio Urshela got hurt and they needed him at third. But he doesn't hit with enough power to be an everyday starter at third base. Like, he's not that guy. He batted .271 last year between AA, AAA, and the majors. The .758 OPS. He had a total of 10 home runs across every level last season, if I did all that math right in my head real quick on this. Yeah, they were all in Gwinnett. 48 games in Mississippi, no home runs. Granted, terrible offensive environment for homers. Like, one of the worst in baseball from a park factor perspective, but still. He did not hit for a lot of power. I've got the minor league StatCast dashboard here. 101.5 is the 90th percentile exit velocity in AAA for Nacho Alvarez, and that's 202 balls in play. So that's a 20. I think they run that down. So they 20 batted ball sample. It's the hardest 10% of your batted balls, or what they use for your 90th EV. Again, the MLB average is right around 103. So below average power from Nacho Alvarez. And so because of that, it's a weird profile for a corner. I do think that if Nacho Alvarez does stick as a major leaguer, it's a second baseman. The defense is stretched at short. He doesn't have the power for third. And the first opening you're going to have on your major league roster is going to be at second base. One, because Ozzie Albies gets injured a lot. This is an odd number year. Might not be this year. But he gets injured. And also, his deal expires before Austin Riley's. They'll play him some at shortstop next year. I don't think at the end of the day, Nacho Alvarez is a shortstop in Atlanta. He'll play some shortstop in spring training. He'll compete for the job with Orlando Arcia. I fully expect Orlando Arcia to beat him because Arcia is a better defender. This is not like the Vaughn Grissom thing where, hey, we're pretty confident you can hit for power and you can be a good offensive performer if you can be adequate at short, and he couldn't do that. I do think that Nacho can be adequate at short. I just don't think you're getting a lot of offensive impact out of him. Zone contact, almost 90% in AAA. Overall contact, 85.8%. Great numbers. He walked 12.8% of the time. You love all of that. But it's not the typical profile at third base. And for a team that is going to be without Ronald Acuna Jr. for some time next year, and just came off a year where they were struggling a bit in the power department, and is facing the potentially losing your designated hitter, Marcell Ozuna, after 2025, it's hard to plug in a below average power guy at second base in Nacho Alvarez. They'll probably have to do it if there's an injury, but I don't think he's going to be option A. Nacho Alvarez is not going to be a shortstop in the major league level unless he takes a dramatic leap in his defense. Defense usually does get better as you move up the ladder. Like, it does get better. I just don't see anything that makes me think there's going to be a leap, and a lot of the external evaluators I've talked to agree with that. All of the issues that Nacho Alvarez has, defensively stretched at short, not having the power profile for third, not being consistent enough offensively for second, all of those are magnified for Luke Waddell. 5th rounder in 2021 out of Georgia Tech. 311 career minor league games. He has 18 home runs. His 90th percentile exit velocity on 342 balls in play. Remember how I said 103 was the major league average? Waddell's 90th percentile exit velocity, 98.7. It literally comes in at a 20 on the 20 to 80 scouting scale. A bottom of the barrel power. So obviously, to make that work, you've got to hit a ton, right? Here's the issue. In Gwinnett, 232. And again, 340-something balls in play. This is over 2 seasons. He's batted 232. And specifically, fastballs over 94 miles an hour have given him a lot of trouble. Again, came out of Georgia Tech, really great contact rates. We knew the power wasn't there, but the contact has backed up. The whiffs have increased as he's moved up the minor league ladder. And then defensively, he's also stretched it short. It really feels like his ceiling is utility glove at the next level. He's not your no doubt guy at shortstop either. You move to Double A, you've got similar issues here. EJ Exposito and Cal Conley. Exposito, 16th rounder in 2022 out of college, batted .238 in high A as a 23-year-old. 13 home runs in 116 games. I'm sorry, as a 13-year-old. As a 23-year-old. Old for the level, he batted .238. As a college bat in high A, .238, 13 home runs in 116 games. Defensively, I think he's good enough to stick it short, but I don't know if the offensive impact is going to be there. The contact is not good enough to be an everyday guy as of now. Cal Conley, very similar issues to some of these other guys. 4th rounder in 21 out of Texas Tech. He repeated Double A last year and batted .242. In his second go-around in Double A, 24 home runs in 415 career minor league games. 12 of those were in Double A. So half of his career home runs, 12 of those were in Single A. So half of his career home runs in minor league baseball were in the lowest possible full season level of Single A. Another thing, he's not hitting for impact. The defense, I feel better about Conley's defense than Waddell's, but it doesn't look like the contact ability or the power is there to make him an everyday regular. You get into the lower part of the minors, high A, Single A, and rookie ball. And this is where the second of my concerns about the minor league system that needs to be fixed for next year comes up. And we'll break that down next, right here on Braves Today. Welcome back to Braves Today. Lindsay Crosby talking about the minor league to-do list for 2025. And we're talking about the lack of no doubt shortstop prospects in the organization. And I wanted to segue that into this next segment because I think they're connected. Because a lot of your shortstop options in the lower minors are your former top international prospects. And I've noticed it feels like a few different international classes now. You're not getting the performances, the steps forward, and the leaps that you were expecting out of some of these large dollar commitments. I think it's a little bit of a mild concern that some of these high dollar international names international prospects are not doing as well as you would expect based on the pedigree and the bonus that they receive. Because Atlanta's minor league player acquisition strategy is very clear at this point. They draft pitching, and then they sign hitters in international free agency. And they like to be involved with one of the top guys every year based on the money they have available. And a lot of that is freed up since they've gotten away from the John Capella sanctions. But they like to go and get hitters in international free agency and pitchers in the draft. And I would argue that the draft side is holding up their end of the bargain. Ronit Shaw is bringing in potential impact pitchers in every single draft. Whether it's finding guys in the 5th round like AJ Smith-Shawver, not being scared to go take a Spencer Schwellenbach after he closed for 1 year in college, and then he did what he did last year. The draft side of this is working. The international side, the last few years, are not. Now, some of these hitters are developing. Drake Baldwin, obviously a success story. He's the highest ceiling hitter in the Braves organization. We're going to get to him, actually. We're going to touch on him in that third topic, that third segment. But for the most part, the hitters aren't developing like they should be. And I'm struggling to figure out how much of that is selection of the international players, how much of that is the development of the hitters. It's not all one or the other, but what's the dividing point here, right? Is it 50-50? Is it 60-40? There are some success stories here, right? John Gill, 2023 IFA, $110,000. The walk rates have been really good when he got in the full season ball. The defense is good. I like the swing. It's a very easy and smooth swing. But there's still a little bit of he's struggling with breaking stuff when he got to Augusta last year. He's obviously still young, right? It's the first time he's really seen good breaking stuff. But even the success stories have large caveats on them. There's not just a slam dunk, can't miss international guy. And Boris Tavares, $1.5 million in 2021. Great defender. The defense is phenomenal. He's run a strikeout rate between 38 and 40% in every year he's been in the organization, including when he was in the Dominican, in the DSL, where the pitching is atrocious. Strikeout rates of 38 to 40% every year. Diego Benitez, $2.5 million in 2022. He struggled so bad in Single A Augusta last year, they sent him back down to the complex. It wasn't an injury thing, because it was like 1 week he played for Augusta, 3 days later he was in the complex. It wasn't like he took time off and had to rehab an injury. They busted him back down because he was struggling so bad to make contact. His batting averages were in the ones. Jose Perdomo, jury's completely still out. He got like 8 games because of injuries, hamstring injury, things like that. But he signed for $5 million in last year's class. One of the top position player prospects in the entire class. And he got 8 games, 20 at-bats. He drew 2 walks, so 22 plate appearances. He went 5 for 20, no extra base hits, or all singles, 2 for 3 on stolen bases. Again, played 8 total games, and that's it. And then it's not just the shortstop. That's who I'm obviously talking about here. But it's not just the shortstops. When you get to the outfielders, you still have Luis Guanipa, batted .219 between rookie ball and Single A last year. Hit 2 home runs in 52 games and 217 at-bats while striking out 45 times. So just under 1 a game. It's not just the shortstops, but it's the international players in general in the lower minors are not producing like they need to. And again, I don't know what the distribution is between, did you select the wrong players? Is the hitting development lagging behind? What's the right percentage of blame in those areas? I don't know. Because honestly, one of the hardest things I can imagine in baseball is to be a young kid from Latin America who's given a bunch of money and then sent to a new country where you don't speak the language and you're asked to play baseball for a living every day when all of the pitching is much better you've ever seen before. It makes sense that it's hard. But it also just feels like it shouldn't make sense that none of them are working out in the last couple years. What's the last major international free agent success story in the Braves organization? Is it Ronald Acuna Jr.? Is that the last position player success story that you have from international free agency? Because if it is, you obviously have a problem. And figuring out what is the disconnect here between the player acquisition, the player development when it comes to international players and hitters in general is an issue that Atlanta has to figure out for 2025. There's another angle when it comes to the hitting development that we'll discuss: the power, or specifically lack thereof. And we'll do that next, right here on Braves Today. Welcome back to Braves Today. Lindsay Crosby, final segment of the Friday show, talking about the to-do list for the minor leagues for the Atlanta Braves in 2025. We talked about you got to find an actual shortstop prospect. You've got to figure out what's going on with the international free agents and their lack of development. And I'm going to go along in that same vein. It's connected. It's not, if you figure out one, you may figure out the other. Where's the power production in this farm system? Your best power hitter is Drake Baldwin. I think that's absolutely a given, right? He hit 16 home runs last year between AA and AAA. I actually believe he tied for the system lead in home runs with Andrew Velasquez, who hit 16 in AAA, he's also 29 years old. He's a former major leaguer. So among the prospects, the 16 home runs for Drake Baldwin leads the system. Now, the caveats here, I mentioned it with AA. None of these parks are great for power production. This whole organization slants towards pitchers' parks. None of them were as bad as AA Mississippi, as Trustmark Park, I think it was. And that's obviously gone. We have no idea how Synovus Field in Columbus will play for the Columbus Clingstones. We won't get that information till later in the year. I plan to be at the opening day game for Columbus. Maybe we'll get a rehab start from a Spencer Strider or Ronald Acuna Jr., who knows. But we have no idea how that will play. But for the most part, this organization slants towards pitcher parks. But with that being said, the lack of power production in this organization is a little bit concerning. Because you just don't see, like, it makes it difficult to figure out who can be an impactful major leaguer if there's no power production whatsoever, okay? Your top home run hitters in the minor leagues, I already mentioned Andrew Velazquez. I already mentioned Drake Baldwin. EJ Exposito hit 13, mostly playing high A, mostly hit 13. Tyler Tolvey playing entirely AA hit 11, which is actually a big deal because it is, obviously, it is AA Mississippi. He hit double digits, right? Adam Zabrowski, another catcher, added 10 between high A and AA. But certain positions that you would expect to be power positions just weren't doing a lot of power production for you. Outside of first base, where Matt Olson hit 29 home runs in the organization, no other first baseman in this organization hit double-digit home runs. Your second highest producing first baseman from a power perspective was Bryson Horn, who hit 8 home runs in 107 games. He's 25 years old in AA. He hit 8 home runs with 103 starts at first base. Drew Compton, between single A and high A, playing mostly first, got some DH time, 2 games at third. He hit 8 in 110 games. Like, your first base, you're not getting power production, right? Your other infielders, Andrew Velazquez, 29 years old. He did some stuff, right? EJ Exposito did some stuff. Outside of that, Lisandro Espinoza hit 6 in single A last year. Wasn't even in your organization. You took him in the Rule 5 draft. And then the guys that we've been told are the power hitters have been dealing with injuries that have made them not very effective. I'm thinking specifically here of David McCabe. He was a first baseman in college. We drafted him at third base. Or we drafted him and put him at third base. He had Tommy John surgery, so he's going to go back to first base. Most position players who have Tommy John surgery end up moving to a less demanding defensive position. Center fielders move to left field. Third baseman move to first base. Things like that. David McCabe already was not great defensively before the Tommy John surgery to his throwing arm. He only DH'd last year. 35 games at DH, 2 home runs, 214 slug. I'm going to throw a little bit of that out because he was coming back from the injury. It was a partial year. Bryce Harper didn't do jack when he came back from Tommy John that season either. But the year before, 2023, 17 home runs in 123 games as a 23-year-old in single A and high A, coming out of college. And there's a couple reasons here for this, that I think you don't have the power hitters in the system. Some of it has to come back to the hitting development, though. And the issue is we don't know how much. So when it comes to the position players, the things that I've noticed, one, Atlanta's been, I'm going to say aggressive at position conversions. I mentioned McCabe was a first baseman in college. They moved him to third base. He's going to have to go back to first. Seben Ceballos was a third baseman at Oregon. They tried it. They were going to try him at shortstop, and they couldn't make it work. Ended up trading him away. Nacho Alvarez wasn't a shortstop in college. So it's position conversions like that, right? They're trying guys at more demanding defensive positions. Part of me wonders, is the extra effort they're having to give defensively, the extra defensive drills and all of that, is that impacting their offense? I don't know, but it would make a lot of sense. Another thing we've touched on already, the bad offensive environments. It's hard to adequately measure just off conventional stats how good a guy is as a power hitter, because the environments you play in suppress the power production. The entire AA Southern League is a pitcher's league. All of those parks are pitcher's parks. But again, none of them are worse for power production in the minors than AA Mississippi. So some of that doesn't help. The injuries. We mentioned David McCabe. The injuries don't help as well. The outfield has a little bit of a different kind of issue there. There's a big focus on center fielders when you're drafting in the outfield. Makes a lot of sense. Center fielders inherently are more valuable from a defensive perspective. The defense should hold if they have to move to a corner. But typically, the floor offensively is lower. And the ceiling, or I guess not the ceiling, but the likely best case scenario outcome is lower for a center fielder than a corner outfielder, right? Think about your big power positions: left field, third base, first base, right field for the most part now in the modern baseball game. And you're not getting a lot of that especially in the outfield, when you draft a bunch of center fielders. Another thing is the Braves have been aggressive at taking those super toolsy center fielders who can't really hit yet offensively. Great example of this, a guy who really struggled in his first year, Isaiah Drake. In my time hosting Locked On MLB Prospects, spent 2 years over there hosting a daily prospect show, won an award for it. It was a great show. One of the most risky draft profiles that I saw teams go after over and over again was the super fast, super toolsy prep outfielder with contact issues. The dudes that made it work in high school because they could slap a ball the other way, they could lay down a good bunt, beat it out, they could put it on the ground and beat the throw to first base. But when they got in professional baseball with pitchers who could actually locate, who had more than one breaking pitch, who could sequence a little better, they struggled. Isaiah Drake's a great example of this. He dealt with a little bit of injury, but 74 games, he batted 159 with a 513 OPS. He played almost every day in center field. That's what you want. That's the most valuable defensive position. His speed is good enough to stick there, but offensively, he didn't show. He struck out 107 times in 74 games. Didn't show nearly what you need him to show to project out as a major league regular. And some of the prospect lists that I've already seen that are coming out this spring, talking to different people at the different sites and things like that, some of them have taken him off the list entirely. A lot of the other ones have dropped him down pretty far. And so, that's just an example. There's tons of examples of guys like this who have had these issues. Corner outfielders, center fielders, whatever. Cody Milligan, 25 years old in AA, batted 238, 5 homers. Yes, it was AA Mississippi. It's a bad environment. He still slugged 358. Struck out 104 times in 105 games. So when you draft a bunch of center fielders, you're not getting those super powerful corner profiles in your organization. And when you draft a lot of tweener corner infielders and try to move them to a more valuable defensive position, you're not getting the typical power that goes with those positions. Because if they played third base and had great power, they'd be drafted as third baseman. But they play third base, but the power's not really there. You draft them as a shortstop, try to get more defensive value out of them. But the offensive value, the fallback value, isn't there. So I don't really know right here without full access to the organization how you fix these things. But as this Braves team is in the middle of this competitive window, and you're starting to see on the horizon where some of these contracts are starting to come due. Ozzie Albies has a couple club options left. Ronald Acuna Jr. has a couple club options left. 2 or 3 seasons, and you've got to start making decisions on these guys. It's hard to see where you have hardly any help coming from the minor leagues on the position player side Orlando Arcia has got 2 more years, max, if you pick up the option. As of right now, there is nobody in the organization behind him to take his job. And the free agency classes, we talked about that the other day. The free agent classes don't have anything in them either, except for one highly paid guy every year. It was Willy Adames this year. It's Bo Bichette next year. Other than that, not much of anything else. So you've got to figure out, where can we find a shortstop prospect? Do we have to devote draft capital to getting a highly drafted shortstop? We got to figure out why the international players aren't developing like they should be. And we've got to find more power in the organization, because you're going to start having guys. Marcell Ozuna could be gone after this year. Drake Baldwin's probably going to step into his role. Great. One injury, who's your DH? Who's able to give you power from the DH position? Do you move Ozzy Albies there and then put Nacho Alvarez at second? You've lowered the overall power of the Major League roster if you do that. Something you've got to figure out. This has been Braves Today for Friday, December 27th. If you're listening on audio, do us a favor. Leave a 5-star review. If you're on YouTube, subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell when we drop the next episode. Also tell all your friends to come listen to Braves Today, Braves Today podcast, and go subscribe, bravestoday.com. Until next time, this has been Braves Today.